Now that we have completed the video of delivery creation, let's go back to our case study with fresh eyes and see how we apply our knowledge of the delivery creation into the business case. So let me go to the presentation again, and let's just remind ourselves that the customer makes widgets and it ships it on the same day. The factory or the warehouse is actually in the middle here of England, and it's divided into 4 regions. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's revisit the points again. It takes the orders from the customer and ships them on the same day, and the picking and packing are done in the same day. What this means is that the PGI is actually done on the same day in which the delivery is created. And this means that the picking and packing and loading, the lead time for that, or the time it takes to do all of this, is 0 days. Yeah. Now, important here, 0 days means that all of it is done within a 24-hour period. Yeah. It doesn't mean that it doesn't take any time at all. It just takes less than 24 hours to prepare. So it's simple. You create the delivery, and on the same day you do the PGI, because your picking, packing, and loading is done in the same day. So we now have the issue of the cut-off times. So as we said, we have 4 regions here. Now the cut-off times could be different, and what we are going to say is each region, so up north, we want to create these deliveries first because the route is longest. So we have to create the delivery here at 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. We have to create the deliveries in this region at 4 p.m. We have to create this lowest region here, create the deliveries at 5, and we create here at 6. Why do we do this? Well, what we do is we create the deliveries in the most northern region at 2 because we want to PGI it in such enough time as it has enough time to arrive at the customer the next day. So let's say, for example, it takes 5 hours or 6 hours to, let's say it takes 12 hours to arrive, then you want to create the delivery at 2, maybe do all the picking and packing by 4, and then have it leave the warehouse at 4. And then because let's say it takes 10 hours to arrive, it might arrive the next morning, for example. Now, in the delivery in the middle section here at 6 p.m., it might be again, it takes, let's say, 3 hours to do, but because it may only take an hour for it to arrive to the customer, or 2 or 3 hours, then you can create the delivery later, you can process it later because it takes less time to ship it to the customer. That's why each region has a different delivery creation time based on how far they are from the warehouse. And what we would do is in our batch job, we would create the deliveries based on the route. So let me just make a note here. So the batch job will be created by route. And what this means is, at a particular time before 2 o'clock, before the cutoff, you would run ATP, and then you would run the batch job that creates the deliveries only for a particular route. And then at 4 o'clock, you run ATP again, and then you create the deliveries only for the route that is for that region. And that's how you would do it. Now, the question is of ATP scheduling. You could have ATP or not, you could have rescheduling or not. That's based on the business case. By default, as just a best practice, I like to just run rescheduling every single time before I create the delivery. It's nice, simple, straightforward. Again, look how the business wants to run it. Maybe they don't need it because they have full availability or whatever, but understand the concepts of it. So you create the deliveries by time rather than create it all at once. We then have the export deliveries. We said that this is manual. So what will happen is in the batch job we will never create the deliveries. So it's manual by users, which means that the route, we give a very specific route, let's say export, and our batch job, we explicitly not select routes that are equal to export. For the parcel shipments, it's less than 10 kilograms, and we would only know this when we create the deliveries. So obviously, for all of these routes here, every time we create the deliveries, if we know that it's a parcel shipment, the route will now become 1 day. If it's less than 10 kilos, based on our route determination logic, which also means that we want to recalculate our delivery deadlines. And the reason is because it now takes longer to arrive the customers, the delivery deadlines and the delivery due date becomes longer. Yeah. So in the configuration, we want to say if the route changes, recalculate the delivery deadlines. For shipments, we will talk later, but that is how we would, that is the business case now we've gone through for delivery creation. In this lecture, we're going to have a look at the creation of deliveries in the background. Now, this is important because the first thing it does is it actually saves on the manual labor, i.e. a user doesn't have to every day go in and run the transaction. This saves time and effort, yeah, because you know what time you're running it. A user doesn't need to do it. Just run it in the background. It saves time. The second reason is that you can use it to reinforce cutoff times. If you say that you're going to run the delivery creation at 4 o'clock, then the batch job runs at 4. That means if you create your sales orders after 4, it's not going to be created. You're not going to create a delivery. Now, if it was a user, they might create it a little bit later, a little bit sooner. No, you want a human interaction to be minimal in this case. And lastly, you can use it to enforce some business rules. So for example, you can run the delivery creation for returns at 2 o'clock, yeah, or at 6 o'clock. So it takes away the human error factor as well. In this video, we're going to have a look at why we use the transaction VL10 batch. We actually use this transaction to create the deliveries in the background. We'll also have a look at something called the F code, and we're going to use the F code 5001 to do it. Now, it's important because when we look at the normal transaction, when we look at if we were to run it using VL10, A, B, and C, if we were to run it in the background, you notice that the system actually doesn't create the deliveries. And let's have a look why. So I'm going to run VL10 normally. And as you can see, it's a normal screen. If I click on the user role, you can see here, grayed out, is a user role 001. And the role 001 means it automatically populates all of these values here. It says if it's relevant for sales orders, what the layout look like, what the rules are for the delivery quantity. You can see, well, it's cumulative, etc., etc. There's lots of options that the role 1 is. The most important of them is this F code here. And if I click on the F code, it's get, prepare, display. There's no create there. The one we really want to use is 5001. And it has SAMD, which is create without output list. So what I really want is the F code 5001, which will cause the system after you execute it to create the deliveries in the background. As I said before, if you run this with the code 001, with the profile 001, the system will just display the sales orders that need to be created for delivery, and that's it. Yeah, you really need the F code to create in order to make the deliveries in the background. And as you can see, it's grayed out. We can't do anything. Yeah, and it's only in 5001 do we have all of the right values here to create the delivery. So as I said before, the F code here is 001. And yep, and we actually, that's fine. Yeah, And the delivery creation also, you can see here, is 0001, which means you'll create the deliveries when we run the transaction. So, and as you can see, it's grayed out, so I can't change it. So you see, if I go to the F code here, I click on maintenance, it's grayed out. If I click on 5001 here, which is the delivery list, I try to put it in, it doesn't work. Yeah, so it cannot be maintained in the VL10. It's all grayed out. And that's where the background job comes in. So if I run the transaction here, the first thing I need to do is create a variant. So I go ahead, I'll put a variant called new job. I'll select all of the screens, and I'm creating my variant. So I put in my shipping point that I want and the delivery create date. As you know, like we created before, you have the option 1, 2, and 3 until 9, and that will choose which kind of date you want. And in this case, I would just want 1. If I press enter now, the system automatically calculates the delivery date and puts it in. If I go then to the next screen, you have the option here, delivery priority, sold to party, ship to. Let's keep on going. I want the sales document type OR. I keep on going. Create by material, partner functions. Now you see in this screen, role is not grayed out. I can do the pull down. I can then choose role 5001. I select that. I press enter. Oops, let's go back. And the system now automatically puts the profile here. If I now select the profile 5001, which is the one I want, I press enter now. And if I go to the F code, now let me do that again. Okay, that's perfect. Right, now put in the profile again. Sorry about this. 5001. Okay. Now I have 5. Now if I click on the F code, I have the SAMD code, which means that the system will create the delivery after you run the transaction. You execute it, you create the delivery. So the next screen is the ATP. I'm going to skip that. We're back in our main screen. If you ever want to populate or calculate the dates, like the goods issue date and so forth, this one is when you want to save the variant, you have the option to put in a dynamic calculation. Yeah. So let's go back. There's actually no save button here, but if I go back, the system will say, do you want to save the values? I click yes. This is where you actually save it. So I put in your description there. And here is your final chance. This is where you will put your date calculation in your variant. Yeah. So for example, goods issue date, PGI date, and so forth. Picking date if you ever wanted to. But let me go on. Let me save this variant so we can create the job. So the variant now has been saved with the job. So if I go back to the transaction, I have now my variant new job. And now let's schedule a job to use this. So I click the schedule button. Yep, I just set the execution date and I say schedule once. And that's it. The background job now has been scheduled. Yep. And if I say display scheduling, you can see here is the new job. And it's as simple as that. That's how you do it. So if I ran the transaction SM30 to have a look at the background job, oops, accidentally pressed the log here. Let me run the transaction SM37 to see the job. And as you can see, the job has been scheduled. It hasn't been released, but that's okay. What I wanted to show you was how I actually created the batch job in the background, yeah, using the transaction VL10 batch. one of the most heavily used transaction, or most commonly used transaction, is the transaction VL06, which allows you to select deliveries that are based on a particular status. The advantage of this is that, the way people use it is that they will select all the deliveries that have a particular status. They will process those deliveries one by one, get it out of their queue, and then someone else would then run the delivery. They'll select the deliveries in different statuses and select and process those. So all through the day, for example, you would do this. So for example, you would create the delivery and then you would run the transaction and say, show me all the deliveries that need to be picked. And I pick one, I do the confirmation here, and then I will say, show me everything that needs to be packed. I do the packing list, and then I run the program again after the packing list and say, show me everything that needs to be goods issued. And I would then process the document. So let's have a look at the transaction in SAP. It's under logistics execution, outbound processing, and it's goods issue for outbound delivery. And it's under list and logs. And the transaction is VL06 O for outbound. You can see here the statuses for picking, for confirmation, for loading, for goods issue, for transportation planning, for example. But let's have a look at the goods issue one. And here is the selection. Yeah. Now you can put in the shipping point, or for example, but let's expand the selection, and you can see here the delivery status, which is in gray, says select everything that is in that particular status. So the status field here that's in grayed out automatically ensures that you select everything that's been picked and it's ready to be goods issued. So now, obviously, when you run it, if I scroll up, it also has the planned goods movement date automatically populated. You can also put the shipping point or the planning point or however you want it. If I click on picking, for example, you have the picking dates here, and if I expand the selection button here, if I scroll down, you can see here the status. The overall picking status is set to A, and the total goods movement status is not set to C. So again, it's only ensuring that it selects everything that's been picked. Now, if we look at the process here again, I want to iterate how it actually works. It's like a conveyor belt. Yeah. So each person is like an operator on this line on the conveyor belt, and each operator only does one thing. Right? Let's say one operator does picking, one operator does packing, one operator does goods issue. So as the conveyor belt moves, it first, so one operator would say, show me all the deliveries that need to be picked. So he runs the transaction, selects the first delivery that needs to be picked, right? He goes away, does the picking, right? Puts the picked materials in the packing station, updates the delivery document, and then refreshes it, shows him the next delivery. Because once you update the delivery, it's now not relevant for picking. For the first operator, the delivery now doesn't exist in his list. It doesn't exist in his queue. Then if we go to the second operator, he will keep on refreshing, and he'll say, show me everything that needs to be packed. Once the operator has finished the picking, it's now ready for packing. The next operator will see that the delivery is now in his queue. So as a conveyor belt approach, the delivery has moved from the picking person to the packing person. The packing person will then pack the materials and everything else. He'll update the document again. Yeah, and now it's vanished from his queue because the statuses have changed. And the person who does the goods issue, when he does his refresh on the VL10.6 transaction, he will see that this document is now ready for goods issue. Yeah, so he'll go in, he'll pick up that delivery, he does the goods issue, he updates that delivery, he does the refresh, and that document, because the status has changed, it's not ready for goods issue anymore, it has been goods issued, that document then is released or moved away from its queue. And that means that the delivery has been processed, it's out the door. So you can see that by using the VL06 O transaction, you can then, it's like a how would you say it? It's a process flow, and it's a work list. Yeah, and every time you update it, the materials move away from your work list, and that's really how we should use that transaction in a warehouse setting. Use it as a work list. You just keep on processing through all of the deliveries.